So what is bureaucracy and why is it not as benign as just a little bit of paperwork hassle? Well, to answer this question, we're going to respond in a good sociological way, which means we're going to look firstly at the definition. What is actually a bureaucracy? What is the definition of a bureaucracy? So the first person that really discusses this, who is widely cited in sociological work, is a man named Max Weber, who you probably will have heard of if you study sociology. So he described bureaucracy as a permanent structure with a system of rational rules, which were fashioned to meet calculable and recurrent needs by means of normal routine. He argued that a bureaucracy was a system founded on rational, legal, administrative structures which promises a variety of practical freedoms. From this perspective, bureaucracy then would lead to a discharge of business according to calculable rules and without regards for persons. Interesting. A man named Bauman came along, and he argued that understanding and operationalizing bureaucracy in Webbian terms may actually result in the reproduction of a system that loses sight of humanity. He wrote, and I cite, Bauman, a little bit of introduction to Bauman actually, before I just jump straight into that quote. So Zigmund Bauman, he was born in 1925. I'm literally just checking Wikipedia here, just to give you a little bit of information. So he was a Polish sociologist and philosopher, and I believe that he became British as well. He was born into a Jewish family in Poland. And then in 1939, when Poland was invaded by Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, his family escaped. I believe that he went to Israel, and then he became a professor. And then, he went to the UK and he became a professor of sociology at the University of Leeds, which is very interesting. That's actually where I did my undergraduate degree. He wrote on a lot of different issues, including modernity. He wrote about the Holocaust. He wrote about postmodern consumerism, liquid modernity. He's a really very, very interesting academic. For us, and in relation to this quote that we're looking at right now, the important thing to bear in mind is that he lived through, he was in Poland when they were invaded by Nazi Germany. He is Jewish, from a Jewish family, and he experienced the Holocaust firsthand. He had family members that died in the Holocaust, and he was there at the time. So he's not discussing something that he doesn't know. Nonetheless, I think that this quote is potentially very controversial. So he said, "The Holocaust is so crucial to our understanding of the modern bureaucratic mode of rationalization, not only and not primarily because it reminds us, as if we need such a reminder, just how formal and ethically blind is the bureaucratic pursuit of efficiency. Mass murder on an unprecedented scale depended on the availability of well-developed and firmly entrenched skills and habits of meticulous and precise division of labor. The light shed by the Holocaust on our bureaucratic rationality is at its most dazzling once we realize the extent to which the very idea of the Endlösung, I apologize for my German, that means the final solution, was an outcome of the bureaucratic culture." Gosh, it's a heavy quote, isn't it? It's very, very heavy because he was really critical in this article, he was really critical of sociological scholarship about the Holocaust, because he thought that people either said, the Holocaust is an example of the worst of humanity and that people didn't understand. He was just really critical of the way in which academics and sociologists were interpreting the Holocaust, because he fundamentally argues that the Holocaust was actually a production of modernity, and that the way in which so many people were killed is an outcome of this kind of intensely rational and bureaucratic mechanism, because people do not have regard for humanity within a bureaucratic system. And if you've had any experience at all with a bureaucratic system, then you will understand that the individual is not considered and is not recognized. And he argues that this can actually be taken to horrific extremes. Either people are not necessarily going to agree with Bauman, and his argument that the Holocaust was just this kind of cold rational calculus, I think, is difficult to understand. I was reading Bauman, and then at the same time I was reading The Pianist, and I couldn't really, they were very, very different accounts, because The Pianist is also set in Poland when it was invaded by Nazi Germany. They were very different accounts of what happened. In The Pianist, it's not necessarily, I don't know, there are some such shocking examples of violence that were committed, and it wasn't in this, like, there wasn't always in this, I don't know, it's very difficult to talk about, but it's a controversial point, but the piece that I really want to take away is how bureaucracy and bureaucratization takes away from the individual, and it reduces us. It can take the humanness out of the system. It's one of the key points that we have to understand when we start this debate about whether bureaucracy is benign, because arguably it's not always the case. So then I would like to discuss the writings of Boatkä. I apologize for my mispronunciation. She's a postcolonial scholar, and she argues that Europe is a geographical space that is uniquely characterized by a maximum of rationality, efficiency, and the systematic, dispassionate pursuit of profit. She argued that increasing depersonalization and distancing from ethical norms were enabled by the expansion of bureaucratization, in which Europeans sought to drive up profit margins by driving down the cost of labor. I think that that's very difficult to disagree with. Rational, efficient, systematic, dispassionate pursuit of profit. I mean, that's literally what the Europeans are. And when I say Europeans, I mean the UK as well. Likewise, Bernstein and Mertz argue that bureaucracy obviates individual agency, and the humanness of the human condition gets lost in the files, the halls, and the shufflings of bureaucratic administration. All of this to say that bureaucracy is not benign, and particularly I'm a sociologist, and I study particularly migration from a perspective of migration. Bureaucracy is really a tool of violence, which is a kind of interesting thing to say, because often when we think of bureaucracies, they're violent. I mean, they can be annoying, they can be tedious, they can be incompetent, but they can't necessarily be violent. Therefore, in conclusion, I would say that it's really important to understand that bureaucracy is not as benevolent as it may appear, and that bureaucracy and bureaucratic institutions can play a very important role in reproducing axes of inequalities and inopportunities, not only racist ones, but also those along class and gender lines. I would say that it's really important to understand and to have a little bit of a critical awareness about the fact that bureaucracies can be applied negatively and with negative consequences, and they are a very significant institution, and bureaucracies are very significant in reproducing inequalities, and they also have a very significant relationship with neoliberalism, which is very important for me, because I would really like more people to understand that neoliberalism is the biggest bane of our society, and that we really need to collaborate together in order to end neoliberalism. So thank you very much if you made it to the end of this video, and I hope that it was a little bit helpful for you. I am going to leave some references and bits and pieces below, so I hope that helps. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you have a lovely day.